Welcome to the first class in a four-part series that Diane and I are going to be presenting called Alchemy of Life. So what is alchemy? Well, you've probably heard the term, and historically the exoteric or the external meaning of alchemy was turning lead into gold. So before the days of NIH and government grants and things like this is how people got money from the king to do their research, because the king figured, I'm going to get more gold from this worthless lead. So this is what they were presenting that they were really doing, but the actual meaning of alchemy, it has a very spiritual meaning. It means a transformation of our being into something different from what we've known before. And there's some ancient sayings that have to do with alchemy. One you've probably heard of, as above, so below. But another part of that saying, which doesn't get as much publicity, is as within, so without. So we tend to divide our realms of experience into internal and external, particularly if you're pursuing any type of spiritual path. So we generally think spirituality is what happens when our eyes are closed, when we're silent, when we're doing some inner practice, when we're trying to put our consciousness into a different state or a different place. And we think, well, that's where the goodies are. The stuff that's out there in the world, well, yes, we have to deal with it, and we want to try to make it as nice as we can, but what's really important is what's happening in these inner realms. But I think that's an illusory notion of what spirituality is meant to be about and what awakening is meant to be about. Awakening, that many Sufis would say, is about participating in the process of divinity awakening to itself in existence, which can only take place by the relationship between everything in existence with what we think of as the divine, God, the transcendent. So when we think of alchemy, we might think, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. Let me learn how to do this alchemy business so I can turn myself into something else. Well, that's an illusion too, because who you think you are is not what's going to enable you to transform, and it's certainly not what's going to get turned into something else, but rather it's a process of freeing ourselves from an illusory, separated perspective in which we feel that we are separated from the external world, and we're trying to do something to ourselves to either get to a different place after this life, generally, and in many spiritual traditions, or to have some great being come along and do something to us that's going to magically turn us into something else. But in actuality, what's going on, it's not about the transformation of what we think of as ourself, being the separated being into something else. It's the transformation of the relationship between who we really are and the way that we're interconnected with everything else that really is. So we're in the midst of the soup, so to speak, and we're wanting to find ways to be able to operate on this relationship we have with everything that we experience. And as Diane and I are going to be talking about today and in the remaining classes, everything in our experience is grist for the mill. It's the substance and the means by which this transformation takes place. Instead of thinking of it often as it's the obstacle that keeps us from being the way that we want to be, it's the very means by which we can arrive at how we want to be.
So it kind of sounds like an awful lot at once. So we're going to be going through it a little at a time and going over it. And I'm even going to tell you the different sections. We can start to kind of organize this in our minds. The first thing I'm going to talk about is our internal laboratory. And it kind of goes with the alchemy idea. There's chemistry in there somewhere, right? But we're talking a little bit differently than a chemical lab. We'll do that real quick in a minute. Then the next thing is the daily routine that we have in our lives, the way that we get up and do the same thing over again and kind of wish we didn't have to do those things, and then we get to something, oh, we'd like this. But the whole daily routine can be the place of transformation. Usually we think it is a boring part, but it really can be something very different, and especially because it's repeated over and over again, it can remind us, oh yeah, okay, and then and be a place of transformation. The next is conflict. Some of us have some conflict in our lives right now in all kinds of ways, and one especially that I'm thinking of, and that can be a very important place of transformation, that we have something that really knocks us over. So we're going to talk about that and find how important that is to us. Then the next thing is creativity. These are the two things now, creativity and nature. So these are the things that a lot of us go, oh, those are, I like that one, let's do that one first. Well, creativity. I even brought a list of some things that I do in my inner laboratory, and I think you're going to recognize what we're talking about here. Gardening. Gardening can be tiring and everything, but it's so fulfilling, right? Sewing stuffies for children. Oh, I got my hand up on that one. Or holding them and putting good energy in them. Making cards from cloth and paper scraps. Oh, Gail and I do that a lot. And painting and drawing, just in general, whatever it is. Painting, yes, and creating things. Making my own clothes. I actually didn't wear anything like that today. Cooking. I think cooking can be a very creative thing. Yes. Oh, here's a baker even. Well, she does a lot of that kind of thing. Planning classes. Oh, okay, we've been doing that. That's creative. Maintaining friendships with others. That's got to be creative sometimes. So that what feels like creative unfoldings and combinings that make me feel more alive and connected to everything else. Those are the things that help us in our creativity. And they're part of our lab, even though they're not an internal lab. They are a laboratory that we're working in. And the last thing that we're going to be talking about is nature, which really explains itself, just what exactly that relationship is. He talked about relationship, and that's one of the places where it's almost like a relationship that happens before we even go out the door. We're going to say, I wonder how the grass is doing today. Did it turn even more green than it was yesterday? And that little hummingbird, I saw a hummingbird today, and they're back. I don't know if you've seen them recently, yeah? And I know, and it went over to one of the bushes that usually has flowers on it, and it was looking around like this, and there were no flowers, and so it just went away. So I was like, okay, come back in a couple days. So those are the part of our laboratory.
So in terms of creativity, and actually in terms of this whole process of alchemy, if you came to any of the previous series that I did with Father Jonathan, we talked about the notion that we live in a simulation. We live in a truncated perspective of what reality really is, and we take that for being the actuality of existence, and we don't think about it because we don't realize there's any other possibility, that's all we have to deal with. We can just kind of move the pieces of the puzzle around in the realm that we're familiar with. But breakthroughs never can happen that way. And so back to creativity, when we have a creative experience through whatever modality, Diane mentioned several of them, something comes to us that frees us from the way that we've been looking at things before. It's like, aha, now I see this, or now I have an inspiration for this melody, expression of art, movement, poem, could be any number of things, a way that you'd been caught up in something, and it could be as mundane as being stuck in traffic and being in what I call grumble mode, and then you look and you listen to the sound of a bird just singing its little heart out, and it's like, oh, I forgot how magical things really are. I just let myself pay attention to this instead of opening to that. And there's always a that. So I used to phrase it in terms of every situation without exception is a portal or an opening to the sacred. And now I'm saying it in a bit of a different way, that we're always in every circumstance at the threshold of the emergence of the sacred. So the opportunity is always present, and what it takes for that emergence to take place is a shift out of that separated vantage point that we usually are stuck in most of the time, and an opening to something different, to something coming through that we didn't realize was available before, and that's the alchemy. So we could say that we're always living in a crucible of life. And what's a crucible? In chemistry, a crucible is a vessel in which a chemical reaction can take place. But we're in the middle of this crucible, and it's not like this container. We can say, here's the top and here's the bottom. It's everything. And the way that reaction takes place is us operating with our consciousness to bring about a shift from how we perceive things before.
Okay, good place for this. So, we're going to be talking about some of the old-fashioned words that they used in alchemy, just for fun. And one of them is negredo, N-E-G-R-E-D-O. And what that means is conflict. So we might be feeling conflicted with some things that are going on in our lives right now.
With an N or an M?
N-E-G-R-E-D-O. That's good to put that on the tape too. Thank you. So what does this mean? Extreme mental states triggered by rises in active brain regions are tied to transcendence and insight. So if you get really shook up by something, and it's really, okay, that's a very good place now for you to feel the transformation that's possible. It's like, I've been here, and usually it's like, oh no, here I am again in this terrible situation. Okay, when we do that, then we are not relating, and we don't have that relationship with the divine that we are going to be in transformation. We are just cycling around again, and it feels so bad and so terrible and so the same as the others. So that's the time when we can think about, oh, this is that negredo. That's why we put words on it, so we can identify them pretty well. So even if you don't have that exact word, you can think about it as, here's the conflict. Okay, so then, some of these are things that we heard in something that actually Stephen brought to us. And do you think it'd be okay if I sent out that connection to the what is it?
We can put in the comments and
In
what
the
I
comments,
post.
how to get to it, yeah. YouTube.
Yeah.
Because this is from that YouTube, some of these descriptions. Adversity carries the keys to overcoming it. So that there's clues in there in whatever happens to us that's knocking us off base. and if we remember that we're really not the person that's stuck in this situation, that's part of us that is stuck, but there's part of us that's waiting to jump forward and be so full of life and love. So it's like, oh, welcome that new being in. Instead of adopting a victim stance, the alchemical process encourages us to ask, what transformation is this experience calling me toward? We may find newfound layers of courage and strengthen a more resilient self. These are genuine opportunities for personal initiation. So, you know, even in groups that we're in, sometimes there's formal initiations and things like, well, these are initiations that life is giving to us. And so it's worth taking another look and seeing. And now with the things that we're going to be doing together, it'll be there'll be little clues that are a little bit clearer than what we had before. And so we can help each other get there.
So with this notion of negredo and the feeling stuck and things are shaken up, the Sufi term for the state would be we're going through a fana, F-A-N-A, and many of you have heard this term before. And the old translation of fana is annihilation, but I think a better term is a release of a previous state of being so that something new can come through, which requires us going through an in-between state, which is often unfamiliar and can be somewhat anxiety-rousing because the old ways aren't working anymore. But we know they're not working. We know something else has to take place, and we're open to discovering what that process is. So a little aside here, many people, well, everybody pretty much is dealing with the chaos going on in the world right now. I mean, just every day it's like something new to react to and just get frazzled by and so on. But as I've talked about before, the true nature of our being is that we exist on many different levels of existence, which I've come to describe as many different vibrational levels. And we may not be conscious of them, but if we just know, in fact, that they're there, there's so much more to our being than what we're familiar with our just physical self. If we know that, and we can just open to the reality that that's available to us, then Pir Balayat would tell this wonderful story about the elephants in India, which some places would wander around, and there'd be chickens, and they'd be pecking at the elephants' feet. But the elephants were far too noble to even be bothered by or to even notice what the chickens were doing. So when we can get to this much fuller awareness of who we are, then all the things that are throwing us totally out of whack, like in this Negredo situation, we can realize, well, there's the vastness of our being, and yes, this is an area that needs attention, and something is taking place that's very important, but it's not all the story. And then we're in a much broader state of being, and we don't get buffeted anymore by it.
So not only do those conflicts happen, in big ways, every once in a while, we have our daily routines that sometimes get us down. We say, well, what happened today? What happened tomorrow? It's the same thing. And it's like, if you really think about it, there couldn't have possibly been everything was the same thing as it was the day before. There was a daily routine that was similar, but take another look at that. So the alchemical way would be thinking about two different terms. These are all just introductions. We're going to get deeper into it as we go along. One is called separatio. What that means is separating what is essential from what is needless. So we're taking a look at and kind of analyze a little bit. Okay, so what in what I was doing is something that is helpful, and what are some things that perhaps I could let go? Maybe there's a change in there. Because remember, we're looking for clues that are going to tell us how can we transform here. And conjuncto means disparate elements now combined into a whole greater than their separate parts. So we're making a choice. I'm thinking of Stephen's moving. That was a great example. He had to bring that part of himself out that goes, okay, these are helpful and I need these in my life now. Because sometimes you go, well, I might need them, in 10 years. Or, no, wait a minute. We need to find what we really need. And, okay, we're going to get that. And now we're going to put them together in a different kind of way. Like I'm going to put these things in the garage and then put these things. So he went through this whole process. So I'm honoring him and doing that. Because that was using our daily routines. Well, in this case, it was more than just daily. This was a big deal change. But it would change his daily routines by reorganizing what is going on. Every thought or emotion that arises in everyday situations can serve as raw material to be converted into a more refined state of consciousness. So again, here's something that's offered to us that we think is And if we look at it differently, it's a banquet. It's something incredibly precious. So, get that compassion part of yourself out, and take a look at it with a little bit different slant and say, oh gosh, what could this be telling me? And then it brings in that relationship with the divine. You could say it that way too, that God is presenting me with something here. Why don't I take a look at that? And call Stephen and see what he can tell you. Okay.
So I'm going to do a little segue about karma, and I've had a whole series on this before, but the usual notion of karma is the consequences of past actions, whether good or bad, and the notion that we have to burn our karma, work through these consequences, whether they're positive or negative, before we can be liberated and go on to whatever we think that liberation is. Different terms and different traditions: mukti, moksha, nirvana, enlightenment, salvation, etc., etc. But Pir Vilayat would talk about us freeing ourselves from our conditioning. And I think karma is our conditioning. And it can be very powerful. We have conditioned aspects of our personality. We have conditioned aspects that are probably carried in the very genes of our body. Conditioned aspects from patterns that we've repeated. And sometimes we think, why does such and such keep happening to me? You know, why is this happening to me? As opposed to realizing that life is very patient and will present us with unending opportunities to learn something we need to learn to be able to proceed and break through to a higher level of being. And we get to repeat the class as many times as needed, although we don't like it very much because it's like, why is this happening? But if we can free ourselves from our conditioned perspective, then we don't have to. I think this notion of karma is not correct, although it's been very much ingrained in spirituality for thousands of years. We don't have to go through burning our karma if we can free ourselves from our conditioning. And a wise Sufi said hundreds of years ago, "Oh man, modified, oh woman, if you but knew that you're free, it's your thought of captivity that keeps you in chains. It's our conditioned thinking that keeps us stuck, that we don't know how to get out of the maze." So I think we're destined to be forever frustrated when we try to bring about a significant change or breakthrough. When we're limited to our existing frame of reference, we're spinning our wheels. And so why do we have spiritual practices? What do they do? Again, the initial notion, which is true and a very important one, it's to enable us to experience different states of consciousness. It's to enable us to experience different realms of existence on which we exist and which are realities. But the purpose is much more than that. It's to free ourselves from a fixed state of consciousness. And the point of the practices is not to get us to just being in this altered, blissful state of consciousness and hanging out there. It's to enable the circulation of light through all the levels of our being, not just within what we think of as our own being, but with everything else. And that's where the alchemy takes place. Alchemy can happen with the focus on inner, just the different levels of ourself, bringing about a transformation between different ways of connecting. But I think more importantly, alchemy takes place in our connections with everything else that we experience. And so if we start to think about, this is the reason for doing spiritual practices. It's a good motivation for doing them, but it's good to keep in mind, because otherwise we can just easily get on autopilot with doing something and thinking that the practice is going to magically do something to us. It's not going to do anything to us unless we engage in a way of relating to it that helps to bring about this transformation.
So that leads back to creativity again, to being creative in doing our practices, for example. You know, how could this be a little bit different? How could I do this? What could I think about? Or like, what inspired me today? You know, think of that little hummingbird or something. Sometimes you have something that came into your day that just changed everything. And okay, well, let's think about that one. How can we maybe just be feeling that love for that hummingbird as I do my practices? I don't know. or like, what I've heard from my grandchildren, or, there's some things that just do it for us, for sure. So more about creativity. When you produce something with your hands, whether music, painting, or simple craft, you engage in an act of creation that it externalizes inner energies that are rarely accessed in daily life. So, we could elevate these things. I was talking to Jonathan about what we were going to be doing in class, and he was like, oh, I want to, make sure that I get the tapes for this. He liked the sound of it. Well, he says he and his wife, Jennifer, have said, if I am not being creative any day, then that was just a waste of time, that whole day. I want to always be creative. And he started listing all the things that Jennifer did that were creative and he did very creative. It's like it's all about that creativity and thinking of the new way and the new refreshing of everything. And we're the ones that can do that. We can do that. And sometimes it takes being with friends that help us with that too. So from the Hermetic point of view, every finished piece is said to carry a vibrational signature that mirrors the Creator's state of consciousness. Okay, so there's a signature in that. You got the little signatures in the stuffies that you're holding that went into it, and I must say that it was an opportunity of reaching out to children that really could use a boost, and it was so much fun. I was just having incredible amounts of fun. That's why I keep doing these. I think over 150, or I don't know where I am with it now, but I can't stop, something that you love so much. Don't put aside the things that you love so much to be doing the things that aren't really wonderful. Well, you can convert the things that don't feel so wonderful. Taking out the trash. There could be a song you sing when you go out taking out the trash. You can have a story that you remind yourself of. Be your teacher in creativity.
So I have a practice that we can do.
Good.
And for those of you listening to this recording that aren't familiar with Sufi practices, the term for them is called, each one is a wazifa, W-A-Z-I-F-A, and wazifa is a divine name. And why are our divine names used? Because Arabic is one of the sacred languages, along with Hebrew and Sanskrit, and I'm sure there's others, in which each word embodies the vibration of what the word means. So in English, meanings are pretty arbitrary, but in these languages, the word itself has the vibration of the essence. So in the olden days, when a Sufi teacher would give their student a wazifa, they wouldn't tell them what it meant. It'd be for them to discover it by working with it. But I will tell you what these mean. And so this is a practice that you can use throughout the course of these 4 classes, because it's really kind of in a nutshell the quintessence of what alchemy is about. So it's 2 parts. And when we say one of these wazifas, we invoke them by saying Ya, Y-A, which means, calling forth that quality. And so the first one is Jami, J-A-M-I. And Jami means gathering together. So as you say Ya Jami, think about embracing everything in your life. The things you like, the things you don't like, your history, your anticipated future, your relationships, all that's going on in the world that you have anything to do with. Imagine that you're taking that all in. And the second part is Ya Qayyum. And Qayyum is spelled Q-A-Y-Y-U-M. Qayyum means perfume or quintessence. So the qayyum of flowers would be the perfume of the flowers. Petals are gone, but now you have the essence. So I was thinking about this when we take a walk about every morning, and we're walking by some deadly nightshade plants. And if you're familiar with them, they're very toxic. You don't want to eat them, but they make a beautiful flower. And I was thinking, this plant just takes dirt. Some people actually eat dirt because there's minerals and wouldn't hurt them a bit. They could eat the dirt before the deadly nightshades grew in there, it wouldn't hurt them. But the deadly nightshade somehow synthesized a poison from this dirt. But out of this process of synthesizing this poison, there's this beautiful flower. So I think that just, and I'm thinking about, they've discovered some different kinds of fungi or different kinds of bacteria that just love radiation, radioactive things. And so they're using them to clean up radioactive sites because they'll turn the radiation into something that's not harmful. And the same thing, some of them just love eating the most toxic chemicals. It's like they're gelato for them. And so this process of alchemy is inherent in all forms of life, but many times alchemy is taking some horrible things and making something wonderful out of it. So in this case, putting together Ya Jami, gathering together, and Ya Qayyum, distilling the essence, it's distilling the essence of whatever is going on in your life, whatever experience you might be having immediately, like at present you're dealing with a very difficult person, or you're just reading about all the terrible things happening nationwide and just getting totally frazzled, but you go, well, how can I distill some perfume from this? How can I bring out the essence? And to me, recently, I don't know if any of you heard any of Cory Booker's talk, and I just heard snippets, but it's some of the most inspiring speech I have ever heard, and it was the most authentic, real. So here's someone, this one person, and I don't know how old he is, but 25 hours, he said he fasted for several days before and purposely dehydrated himself so he wouldn't have to eat or drink, but he was going full steam for the whole 25 hours. But this one act that he did, I think, is going to be a tipping point for helping to turn the energy around in things dramatically from the way that it's been. So I talked about everything always being on the threshold of the sacred coming through, but everything that we do and our way of being in every situation that we're in has the possibility of bringing something forth that becomes available to everything that can bring about a change. So let's try this little practice together. So I'll do it first, and I'll say Ya Jami, Ya Qayyum, and we'll do this just 11 times all together. So I'll do it a few times, and then let's all join in and do it 11 times. Ya Jami, Ya Qayyum, 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 Ya Jami, Ya Qayyum. Once more. Ya Jami, Ya Qayyum. And now as you breathe in, just think Jami without the Ya, and as you breathe out, think Qayyum, and just feel like you're taking in all that's going on, and you're distilling this perfume from it, and you're radiating this beautiful perfume into all of existence. Breathe in Jami at your own rate, breathe out Qayyum at your own rate. and then just relax. And can you sense I think a pretty dramatic difference in the atmosphere of the room? I mean, it was wonderful before, but it's like something very fine has been added to it. And I think if someone walked in just now and they didn't know what we were doing, they would say, "It feels really good in here." And the stuffies have gotten something added to all the wonderful energy that you've already been putting into that. So just, it's amazing the power of, especially a group of people in resonance with each other can add to the atmosphere of what's around. And that atmosphere doesn't just stop. It's not like it's going out like a wave like this. It's radiating everywhere. And anybody that opened to it could feel something for it. So when we think, well, what can I do? Well, we can do this alchemy on the fly wherever we are in a very short time. And we can turn something that just seems not so good into something beautiful. And it doesn't mean the external circumstances magically going to change and everybody's going to be nice in the world, but it means a new vibration has been put forth, and then when enough people kind of attune to this vibration, something will shift. It's a good time for interaction.
Yeah, I'd like to have a chance for a little discussion here too. I mean, all these goodies happen, maybe not the greatest thing in the world, but a little something to offer that might be really important to someone else that's in here. So what did you experience, or even in the whole time that we've been here, what was inspiring for you?
Yes, and what you share, please try to speak up so it'll show up on the recording. Or what questions that you might have, or what this triggered in you.
I'll start. So I went to the mall to walk, and I decided, well, instead of inside, I wanted to walk around the mall because it was kind of nice out there, even though it was a little warm. And so I walked around part that I knew in the front of the mall, and kind of nice. Okay, now in the back where there's the garage, and it's not so marvelous, but I said, well, I'm going to see what there is to see here. There's probably something that I can be happy about. And I had no idea it was this big. So I found this, you might have seen it, this long wall that had been painted by kids, I guess, that came together, and there was a sun and the moon. Is this familiar to anybody? It's really hidden. Go look. Oh. And when I saw it, I thought, thank you, God. I mean, it went on for a long ways. It was big, and it must have taken hours and hours. And so I was looking, and I was thinking, I wonder who did this part right over here. I wonder who did this part over here. I wonder how they felt when they were doing this. And I tell you, it was transformative. It really was. And now I'm telling all of you about it. Maybe you'll go see it. But I was also thinking that that things like that can happen. That something you made, somebody appreciated so much that it changed them. So that's another plus for our creativity. But just being aware of something, or expecting, I was expecting something that was going to be neat and wonderful, and there it was. It doesn't always happen that way, but it did that time. Yes?
During our practice, I peeked a little bit, and this plastic bag, only while we were doing that practice, did the most exquisite dance.
Oh.
And it's like it expanded and went up and elongated and took all kind of forms. And it was so beautiful. We've seen those kinds of things on the internet, just the magic of a plastic bag in the wind. But it's kind of like the practice ended and it just kind of went flat again. And
wow. And now we're all being happy about it.
I'm sorry, you just reminded me, in Austin there's a gallery, it's called Wonder Spaces, and it has this humongous plastic bag that billows you know.
Oh.
And it is very interesting to just check it in. A different way it moves.
Nice.
You were talking about things, altering things that we do, or the routines that we get into in the morning. And every day I pretty much do the same thing. I greet the dogs, I take a pill, I push the button on the coffee, I feed the dogs, I feed the birds, I do what I do. And that's how I start my morning every day. I go out and sing to the birds. I change them. Because they sing to me, so I figure I'll go out and sing to them. But I started waking up in the morning and offering, something to my husband, because I really like him, and I haven't made my own coffee for so many years, and it is so nice to just push a button and have this cup of coffee dripping while I'm chopping up food for the birds and doing whatever I do. And so I've been telling him all the things I appreciate about him in the morning when he's asleep. But it sets the tone for my day, and it makes me giggle, and I like it. And the birds are singing, because I put the feeder out, which I've never done before. I was just throwing it in the fence. But then I noticed the sparrows didn't get a chance to eat. So I thought, well, I'm putting a feeder out there so that when these big birds are eating in the yard, they have some place to nibble, and it's fun. And they've taken up residence in a bush in my yard, so I hear their songs every day, and it just brightens my life. So that's, things change just when you add a little twist, just a little twist.
Oh, I like that.
I do too.
That could be our watchword, add a little twist. Lovely. Anybody else? Yes?
I'll pick up on a little twist. I found out, I was going to let you know that yesterday I got turned down from something I had applied for. I didn't get accepted to something, so it had that initial little. But then, it really, between then and now and with this, it just, because I was so excited about this thing, but I still feel as excited in what I'm going to do, and the things that I'm going to do or already have been doing wouldn't have happened if I hadn't, in some way, kind of putting a twist on that. No, we don't want you to do. I pretty rebounded into a bigger thing. I said, oh. I don't know exactly. Some of it I do, but I really like that, and I like that thought that I know and it's happened so many times of when something didn't work the way I was hoping or expecting, and to where at least I'm now, okay, I know it's going to be good, whatever it is. Sometimes I don't realize that right at the second, but if I look back, it always is. And for me to remember when things aren't going how I was thinking or hoping, that, okay, the portal, the threshold, wherever, but it's usually more expansive than what my original plan was going to be.
Wow. I hope we can all soak that in.
Well, I'm reminded too, you ever been late to get going to some place, and you're, oh gosh, and then you find out that along the way there was a horrible accident at some intersection you would have been driving through, and for all you know, you could have been the car in that accident. So sometimes life has a way of protecting us that we don't realize at the time. Anybody else want to share anything? I know you want to do that.
I don't know if my spring experience is related to
Yes,
this.
I thought about that. I was wondering if you wanted to share that with everybody.
Well, for me it was, I would say either an alchemy or a transformation, that just a tiny thread that I found in my Sufi journal, where I write down important things. I never put it there. I don't know, but I opened this page, and I had been doing some practices beforehand, and so my being and my awareness was open, Otherwise, things zoom past me. I miss it all the time, I'm sure, but that's why I'm here. anyhow, it was a beautiful pink little thing, and pink's not my favorite color either, but it didn't matter. And so about this 4 or 5 inches at the most, I pick it up from the book, inside the page of my book, laying all squiggly, and it's like, whoa, how did you get here, little string? And it was attached to my finger. I let it go to drop, but it stayed attached, you know. Well, hi. And since then, I rationalized it, so I'm not even going into the rationalization while that happened. There may have been physical properties, like, anyhow, who cares? I don't. Because it was almost sacred to me. I just can't believe how excited I got over this string. And I've since gone back and checked, it's still the same way. It still treats me very special and vice versa. So,
Well,
it's a simple thing like that.
I have a term for why that stuck to your finger.
It's called,
Ecstatic electricity.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Don. No, that's where I was going with the rational side, but ecstatic. I love it.
Don't you love how you hear people talk about things that made them happy? Oh, wow. Well, we can keep doing this too to other people in the world sometimes. But right now, we've done this before, but there's a little practice that we can do. I'm turning them off.
Oh, is this from yours?
From you, I received.
Why don't you describe it and I'll record that
Okay.
and I'll stop.
Right, so we're going to be facing one person at a time, and hopefully you will get through more than 2 or 3. And think about your appreciation of them and, showing that. So it goes like this. You're going to put your hands to the other person. From you I receive, and then back from you to the other person. To you I give. And then we hold hands, and we're going to go around the other person in a little circle. Together we share, and then a little bow at the end. In this we live. So it's celebrating our relationship, which could mean many different realms, but in this case with this one person in front of us. And then we'll find somebody else to do that with.
Before we do that, let's all sing it together so the people listening to this will hear it.
Okay.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, in this